cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, niggas don't know what to think. Thought I get money, you change. What you thought we was the same? Still stay away from them clones. Niggas better leave me alone. Talking about niggas as low. Run with niggas who don't know you. Whoa, I make that zagging when city to city. You niggas not hot in your state. If it was money to get a hit Henny, we get it and never complain. Same go for the gang, and we put it up all the same. I can't really eat, let's stay straight, cause we go way back in the day. My day ones from back in the day, they still hang around me today. You wanna come round us, you can't. I'm rolling up loud, it's great. But mama, she bad but complain, cause I'm too in love with my dreams. And I gotta get on the plane, and go get this money with Kenji. I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang.
I get the bag with the gang, taking that Zach to the bank. And it be all in my drink. You niggas is stupid, you think that shit change? You not even hot in your gang. Ain't nothing even hot about your gang. You niggas be lying about same. Be posting them pictures of guns for the fame. Niggas just look at me different now. Say that's your man, but he a clown. Don't fuck around with the fuck arounds. Little nigga, you should cut it out. Me and my niggas take different routes. Punch a bitch nigga all in his mouth. Hold up my nigga, we different now. I need a Robert, this is my style. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I get a bitch today, she probably a foreign model. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I'm with my gang today, tomorrow never promise.
OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang.
Your attention, please. Please do not smoke in the terminal building. Smoking is only permitted in the specified smoking areas.
Zach.
Thank you.
OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake, then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, niggas don't know what to think. Thought I get money, you change. What you thought we was the same? Still stay away from them clones. Niggas better leave me alone. Talking about niggas as low. Run with niggas who don't know you. Whoa, I make that zagging when city to city. You niggas not hot in your state. If it was money to get it.
I think I'm cute, I know I'm sexy. I've got the look that drives the girls, while I got the moves that really move them. I send chills up and down their spines. I'm just a sexy boy, I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy, I'm not your boy toy. Let's go, I make them hot, I make them shiver. These get weak whenever I'm around. They see me walk, they hear me talk. I make them feel like their God ain't real. I'm just a sexy boy, I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. Get it? Eat your heart
That
out, girls.
mic flipped up.
Hands off the merchandise. Oh. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. Welcome everybody to another edition of the Pocket Locker Podcast. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast. And as always, folks, I am in airplane mode. All right, we have got a great show lined up for you this evening. In order to get it started, let's go ahead and get into our communion. All right, here we go. Please raise your glasses and hold on to your asses. Through him, with him, in the unity of the flying man. All glory and honor is yours who flied for our sins forever and ever. You may drink. Alrighty then, and now for our communion song. This one comes to us from Lake Street Dive. It's called Thank You for Being a Friend.
Thank you for being a friend. Traveling down the road and back again. Your heart is true. You're a pal and a confidant. I'm not ashamed to say, I hope it always will stay this way. My hat is off. Won't you stand up and take a
Alright, Pragmatic Crystal is first.
And if we threw a party and invited everyone you knew, you would see the biggest gift would be from me. And the card
Alright, Mark Andrew Demarest the second.
Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being a friend.
All right, 5,000 pocket change.
I'll surely buy you a
In
Cadillac.
vegetative state was third.
Anything you need, any time of the day or night. I'm not ashamed to say, I hope it always stays this way.
What's up, Beck? I see you.
Hands off, won't you stand up and take a bow?
All right, I got Crystal. Mark.
When we both get
Steve.
older,
Roar.
walking sticks in hair.
Look at the trees.
Have no fear, even though it's hard to hear. I will stand close.
Carrie Ann Chrysler.
Thank you for being a friend. Oh, thank you for being
Logan Fisher's in the house.
Thank you for being a friend.
Good to see everybody. Thanks so much for coming
I
out.
wanna tell you about a friend. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being a friend. And when we die and float away into the stars, the Milky Way.
You hear me call.
So nice.
As we ascend, I'll say your name. Then once again, thank you for being a. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being a friend. Listen to me. I wanna thank you for being. Thank you. Thank you for being a friend. I wanna thank you for being a friend.
I wanna thank
My
you.
power for being a friend. I wanna thank you for being a friend. Help me out now.
Thank you right now.
I wanna thank you right now.
Friend, I wanna tell you
Gonna tell you my pal, but I'll tell you again. Thank you. Thank you. What you gonna say?
I think they pretty much recorded all of them with one mic too. Just so well done.
Okay.
Just get the right mic position and we picking up everybody. Oh, it feels good. All right, gang. You know, today's gonna be an interesting one. We're gonna try to tie together some pretty big threads here. I've been wanting to talk about Christianity and racism for a while. I remember I was in a chat. I can't even remember what channel I was on. Could have been Bread of Life for all I know. And a conversation broke out. And I remember, pretty much stating that I think Christianity is racist. And I remember a bunch of people jumping on me about it. And some of those people I've since come to realize just have problematic stances on race issues, and so I don't really care anymore. I'm just like, oh yeah, these people are just problematic, and the fact that they don't want to call this racism is fine now, because I see that they struggle to identify racism, to say the very least. But it's something that I think is important to get into because I do feel very strongly like part of the problem with Christianity is the racism inherent in it. It's part of the reason I feel so strongly that black people should not be Christians. People of color in general, but black Americans in particular should want nothing to do with Christianity. At the same time, I feel like it is one of those more dynamic issues with a little bit of nuance and layers to it, so it's a little bit complex in that regard. What I mean by that in particular is that I see it as an issue because, let's say, for one thing, it's not always straightforward. When we tend to think of racism, we tend to think of, say, exclusively white people, for instance, excluding black people from participation in an organization and things like that. And so it can be hard to see it as a race issue when it's like, oh, there's plenty of black Christians. But with regard to traditional racism that is about skin color and prejudice and hierarchy based on it, you have to look for how Christianity sort of assumes and legitimizes the white supremacy at the heart of structural racism. And so, you know, the KKK is a Christian organization according to them, but it's a little bit more difficult to see because the heart of the gospel is not something that would be at the heart of the KKK. So when it comes to dealing with white supremacy in Christianity, you have to see how it's an institution that perpetuates it and legitimizes it. It takes a little bit of work, in other words, to see the racism. On top of that, when I think of Christianity racism, this is what I mean by it's nuanced and there's layers to it. It's also more fundamentally about having one particular group or culture dominate over all the others. And I think this is difficult for people to understand because it's hard for us to see Christians, especially evangelical Christianity as it's practiced in America, as an ethnicity. But I think it's a good time for us to jump into it because we just did the stream with Maya and Nitty where we reviewed, so now the second time we've visited here, the alt-right playbook, the cost of doing business video. And part of what that helps us identify is that the sort of white majority culture is a culture. It's just assumed to be the norm or the canvas on which, you know, all those other colors are depicted. But I always like to think of it as transplant. If you took your average white Christian and put them in a different part of the world where, let's say, Christianity wasn't commonplace or they weren't the dominant group, would they stick out like a sore fucking thumb? Yes. Would it be because of their weird customs as far as most the locals are concerned? Yes, right? Like their worship rituals and their stories are weird, and their rules are weird, and all of it, down to the way they dress, their music, their food custom. I mean, all of it, right? Be like, who the fuck are these white people? Like, what? From what? From Wisconsin? What is an apple pie? No, nobody eats apple pie around here. What's that? No, you take an apple off the tree and you just chow down on it. What are you talking about? So yeah, I think you have to feel it as a culture and feel it sort of as an ethnicity, which is what I felt like even before, way before I deconverted. I would tell people, like, that's what I felt my ethnicity was, like my family. Like, we're not just Black Americans, like, we're Black Christians, because you'd have to understand the sort of racial identity of my family for anything that goes on and makes sense. But you'd also have to understand that we're Christians to explain why we get together certain times, why women are treated a certain way, why there's different expectations of offspring based on whether you're male or female assigned, or whether you're or your age, right? What was permitted to be played with or not played with, what you could watch or not watch, what was acceptable styles of dress, hair, all of this was completely dominated by Christianity. So honestly, for me, at least as a former Black evangelical, it's laughable to me when people suggest that Christianity isn't like an ethnicity. It's just, we have very different definitions of culture and ethnicity. And so once you then see it as an ethnicity, then it's just a matter of, is it prejudiced or discriminatory against other groups and outsiders? And I'm gonna check on that. And then does it have the power institutionally to even meet the sort of bar of prejudice plus power of a sociological definition of racism? Triple check. Now, so that's element one. That's going to be the primary impetus of what we're dealing with. The other thing is a quick hit on why are evangelicals still loyal to Trump? And for me, there's a perspective in all of this where racism and the politics of white power are essential to understanding why evangelicals remain loyal to Trump. And again, it ties into the other conversations we've been having about coded language and dog whistles and all of this stuff, right? But what Trump does to me is clearly use coded language when he wants to say, when he really wants to get at them. And then he'll explicitly, make it known that he intends to keep them in power. So he can wave the God, guns, and country flag all day long, and then he can use dog whistles and coded language to make sure they know exactly what he means by those things. And then their ability to publicly en masse adhere to the social rhetoric of God, guns, and country is like, okay, yeah, we want the candidates who are all about that. And then because they then use and understand the same coded language, because they have those particular bigotries built into their worldview as well, they're like, oh, yeah, we know exactly what he means by that, right? Because Joe Biden could turn around and say, well, I'm Catholic and I, support people's Second Amendment rights. And, I'm trying to do policies that are keep America's interest, above board and keep American, keep things good for the good old US of A, right? Basically saying I'm a man of God who will allow you to keep your guns and do what's best for the country, and it doesn't resonate because he can't come out swinging with the same coded language and dog whistles. Now, we're going to try to make that connection. And of course, the big news of the day that hit is Trump being found liable for sexual battery, I believe is the thing here, in the E. Jean Carroll case. And so it's very timely to highlight, the contradiction in the type of moral superiority that the right often does, where we can see boldly that this is really just about power, and they seem not to care about the morality when it comes to Donald Trump. And so hopefully we'll pull all this together somehow as we go this evening. And that's the goal, gang. So let's go ahead and jump into it. First thing we're going to do is figure out exactly what's up and hear a little bit of the news as far as exactly what this verdict was today.
Another major defeat.
Brian,
Donald Trump has been
Let's
found
go.
liable of sexual abuse and liable for defamation in the civil case brought forward by E. Jean Carroll. The jury also found Trump not liable of rape to round out this mixed verdict. But Trump will now be ordered to pay $3 million for defaming her and $2 million in damages for the civil battery claim, totaling $5 million in damages. It's worth noting that Donald Trump never actually bothered to show up to testify in this case, even despite vowing to cut his trip to Ireland short to, quote, confront his accuser. And of course, that line was plucked directly from the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution, but only applies in criminal prosecutions. And because Trump and his legal team are a disaster, they seem to have mixed up whether this is a civil or criminal matter. Of course, when you remember just how many prosecutions Trump is dealing with, then it does start to make sense. I asked former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner whether Trump's decision not to show up could have played a role in his loss in this case, and here's what he had to say during our YouTube-only legal series, The Legal Breakdown.
He can make his case through counsel, but how persuasively can he make his case when the jury sees an empty chair for the person on trial in the civil defamation suit? Now, the jury will be instructed that in a civil case, a defendant or a respondent is not required to be present throughout the course of the trial if the judge permits him to be absent, but it sends an unmistakable signal that, how much does Donald Trump care about not only what he did to E. Jean Carroll, but, what the result of this trial may be. It's not a good look for a defendant.
Have you seen in the past that there's a higher likelihood of juries to basically side with the prosecution if the defendant doesn't bother showing up to defend himself?
So, there is no prosecution when it's a civil case. These are civil lawyers basically.
Plaintiffs, I guess.
What's that?
The plaintiff, I guess.
The plaintiff, right. I can't speak to statistics, but what I will say is, it's just not a bad look. If you think the person being sued, the person who allegedly sexually assaulted the complainant, the person who then defamed the complainant, lied about her, tried to bully her, harass her, threaten her, and intimidate her, doesn't really care enough to even show up for his own trial. Again, I have to believe, even if the judge instructs the jury, don't hold that against him, the jurors are human beings and they're going to absorb something from Donald Trump's absence.
And yet, despite the fact that he made the conscious decision not to bother showing up, still Trump has found a way to position himself as the victim, claiming that he was unconstitutionally silenced. He took to Truth Social today, writing, "Waiting for a jury decision on a false accusation where I, despite being a current political candidate and leading all others in both parties, am not allowed to speak or defend myself, even as hard-nosed reporters scream questions about this case at me. In the meantime, the other side has a book falsely accusing me of rape and is working with the press. I will therefore not speak until after the trial, but will appeal the unconstitutional silencing of me as a candidate, no matter the outcome. And again, he was absolutely allowed to defend himself, and the court was absolutely waiting on him to do so, but he chose not to, whether because he couldn't be bothered, or because every time he opens his mouth, he undermines his own case. And don't take my word for it, take Trump's. Here he is during a deposition for this very case, where he undermined his own defense that E. Jean Carroll isn't his type.
I don't even know who the woman, let's see, I don't know who, it's Marla.
You say Marla's in this photo?
That's Marla, yeah. That's my wife.
Which woman are you pointing to? No, that's
Here.
Carol.
Oh, is that?
The person you just pointed to was
I
E. Jean
see.
Carroll.
Who is that? Who is this?
Point, your wife. And the woman on the right is your then wife,
I don't know.
Ivana?
This was the picture.
Ivana.
I assume that's John Johnson. Is that
That's Carol.
Carol? Because it's very blurry. That she's not my type? Yeah, because it's not politically correct to say it, and I know that, but I'll say it anyway. She's accusing me of rape. A woman that I have no idea who she is. It came out of the blue. She's accusing me of rape, of raping her. The worst thing you can do, the worst charge. And you know it's not true too. You're a political operative also. You're a disgrace. But she's accusing me, and so are you, of rape. And it never took place. And I will tell you, I made that statement, and I said, well, it's politically incorrect. She's not my type. And that's 100%
politically
true.
incorrect.
She's not my type.
Yeah, because nothing says not my type quite like confusing them with the person that you literally married. Here's another moment where Trump undoubtedly hurt himself.
In this video, I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet, just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the you can do anything. That's what you said, correct?
Well, historically, that's true with stars.
It's true with stars that they can grab women by the
Well, that's what it's. If you look over the last million years, I guess that's been
Oh, my
largely
Lord,
true. Not
what a
always,
monster.
but largely true. Unfortunately or fortunately.
What an unrepentant fucktard.
You consider yourself to be a star?
I think you can say that, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately or fortunately, stars are able to sexually abuse women. If you're wondering why the jury could have possibly found Trump liable of sexual abuse, there is no question that his own words did him no favors. This is now the second major loss for Donald Trump in the judicial system, coming in the aftermath of being indicted in the Manhattan District Attorney case for his hush money payout to Stormy Daniels. That trial is expected to start as early as January 2024. And then, of course, Trump is contending with two special counsel investigations, both for the stolen classified documents at Mar-a-Lago and inciting an insurrection on January 6th. He's contending with possible indictment in Fulton County, Georgia, for pressuring Brad Raffensperger to find 11,780 votes that didn't exist. He's contending with a business fraud investigation within the New York Attorney General's office, and the fact that I don't even know if I got them all really does put on full display the extent to which Trump has trafficked so openly and shamelessly in corruption and criminality. And the fact that he even pretends to lead a party that's branded itself the Law and Order Party is about as big a joke as you could possibly imagine. So if you're wondering why Trump is running for president again, sure, he wants the power, sure, he wants the attention, but what he's really looking for is a get-out-of-jail-free card. He needs to insulate himself from the avalanche of accountability that's coming his way, and he knows full well that the only way to do that is by becoming president, by having a...
All right, gang. That sets the stage, right? Both the list, probably partial list of what Trump's actually up against, and potentially the bold-faced, corruption at the heart of even his motivation to remain politically relevant. And so this really requires some explanation. And like, you know what I mean? Because this is the sort of territory you get into where evangelicals, Republicans, conservatives, they're literally playing themselves. This to borrow a line from a story we might be covering maybe tomorrow or something, this seems to be some sort of suicide pact at this point. But let's see what this thing says, and then see if we can we'll see how this plays out with regard to
racism and Christianity.
All these straight. This is a separate case about Stormy Daniels and the trouble that Donald Trump may be in there, to go along with the charges, the civil case of alleged rape with E. Jean Carroll.
And what do we get against this backdrop? Donald Trump beating Joe Biden by 7 points. And you go, what's wrong with people? It's not what's wrong with Donald Trump. It's what's wrong with us. What's wrong with this country? Here's a guy. He's being charged for rape. And we're going to see 3 and 4 indictments. We see 2 impeachments. We led an insurrection. And yet Republicans follow like lemmings off of a cliff. And you have to start to say, and I don't want to attach this back to the gun segment, is what's wrong with people? What is wrong that this man, they still follow this charlatan. They still follow this animal. And you start to go, you throw
There's
up
no
your hands
bottom,
and go,
yo.
I don't
There's
get it.
no
I don't
bottom.
Get it.
Well, and the people who are, let me just say again, the
What's up, Nitty?
evangelical
What's up,
conservatives
AR?
who are supporting the white evangelical conservatives who are supporting Donald Trump are the same people that ran around shouting Bible verses during Bill Clinton's presidency, talking about how the country was going to hell because Bill Clinton was of such poor moral character. And now they continue to stand behind a man, let me say it again, who said in his deposition this year in this case that maybe it was a good thing that stars were able to rape women. And they're voting.
And we just gotta remember that Bill Clinton fucking lied about a goddamn consensual blowjob with an intern. I mean, it seems almost. And I'm not saying it's okay, certainly, but it really feels like a quaint, simpler time. But it's really important to draw the line, because it's really more the point here that this is the same party that destroyed this man over the moral panic. This is the party that wanted Barack Obama taken down because he wore a tan suit, which maybe he did it because he looked so good with his fucking complexion. All right. Didn't wear a flag pin, was shooting hoops and shorts, using a selfie stick in the Oval Office. I mean, they basically fried the man for being a president of the 21st century and not the 18th. And it reminds me of so much of what we deal with in the apologetic sphere. It's where all of this is at this point to me. It's all about people with their particular allegiances. And now when we live in this era where the information is just flowing at our fingertips and the interactivity is everywhere, we can just link up with the gang and jump into some creationist live chat and set them straight in real time. I mean, these people are just determined to be the last one standing in the fight. And it's revealed that there really is no bottom, that there's never been a moral code. It's never been about right and wrong. It's really just about who has the power and who are they going to wield it against, and to how devastating of an effect can they wield it.
For him, like, again, one thing we have found is the bill always, it comes due. You always have to pay the bill. Dominion taught us that. The Sandy Hook, who's that
Alex
guy?
Jones.
Alex Jones. Alex Jones learned that. You look at these people that beat the hell out of cops. They learned that on January the 6th. The bill always comes due. The bill will come due for a church that embraces Christian nationalism and embraces a guy who says it may be a good thing that stars can rape women in 2023.
No, I think that the problem we have, and it goes to your point of the evangelicals, to answer in part what Donnie's saying is that we have no real moral pole that's standing up. So everybody's going asunder. If Moses and Pharaoh has the same moral standards, then who's going to deliver the children of Israel? And I think that that is what's happened. The people that ought to be putting the Donald Trumps in check are checking off a box to vote for Donald Trump, no matter how outrageous he gets. And there's no level that he has taken us down to that they've repudiated. So where's your moral standards? And, you know, one of the things that fascinated me about Joe's special last night is every movement that moved this country forward were led by moral people that stood outside of what was acceptable and moved society their way.
And Rev, by the way, evangelicals, Quakers, a lot of people that were on Abraham Lincoln's side and actually pushing Abraham Lincoln to action were evangelicals. They weren't talking about emancipation 20 years from now. They wanted abolition now. It was the Christian church in the North, in New England, that was pushing Lincoln and was actually ahead of Lincoln. You look at segregation, a lot of Jewish people, as you've talked about.
Abraham Heschel.
During the 60s, and there were evangelicals out there, there were Catholics, there were Christians pushing the civil rights movement as well. And
anti-war movement, the Catholic priest. It was always that those that made.
But to me, this is the problem. This is the problem because there's no truth to it. So it can't reliably move us in any direction. Because just as there was Christians demanding abolition right now, there was other Christians flipping through the Bible going, and a disloyal slave shall be provided with many lashings. A slave shall obey their master. This type of slavery is good, that type of slavery not so much. I mean, so what do you do with that? And again, I'm on the side of everybody else who pretty much thinks if your Jesus makes you a better person, then that's certainly preferable. But if you would just grow the fuck up and live in reality, that's desirable.
Made Lincoln understand to do what is right. Kennedy, Johnson, do what is right. Where are those that are coming to Trump from the evangelical community saying, do what is right? That's what's missing. So you wonder, why are people going for this? Who's telling them not to go for this? That are their moral barometers, moral leaders.
Eddie, you actually have pastors.
And again, I just got to say, none of us should be surprised. This is what I see at the heart of Christianity. These people worship a moral monster. You know, Uncle Bobby recently covered a Christian cartoon about Noah's Ark meant for kids. And I'm really jealous. I want to cover Christian propaganda for children because it looked like so much fun to rip apart. But think about that. That is the celebration of a genocide as though it was the greatest act of grace and love the world has ever known. They worship a monster. They worship the God who sacrificed himself to himself for himself in the most bloodiest way possible. They worship the biblical stories of word. They worship the God who failed to include thou shalt not own people as one of the prime, as any, not just one of the 10, but not even one of the 613 fucking laws. But did write a whole ass instruction manual on regulating slavery. And they worship that motherfucker. That's why so many of y'all that are comfortable with Christianity, I think something wrong with you. Like you're just not being honest. You're not being honest with yourself so that you can maintain comfortable relationships with Christians because you need that proximity to Christians for some reason. And I think it'd be more impressive if you did some soul searching and figured out what is at the heart of the proximity that you still need from these Christians. But I'm very unimpressed by people who won't be honest with themselves and others about you worship monsters. Like this is your fucking game plan. Why do they worship the moral monster? Why do they worship God? Stop playing, y'all. Why do they worship God? Because they believe individually it gives them power. Individually, it makes them part of the chosen special people who get special rights and privileges above all others. So their continued loyalty for Donald Trump should look like their fucking playbook. It's who they are. It's who they fucking are.
Better, who have told me they know better, but they're afraid.
Yeah, they're
to
better
speak
when that's a
from the
convenient
pulpit
option.
because they think they may lose their
If
congregation.
they could stay in power and
Point
be
actually
nice,
reverses in some
they'll think
interesting
about
way
it.
what Rev just said, right? So we can concede we have feckless leaders, we have spineless ministers in pulpits in some places who aren't in some ways engaging in that kind of moral leadership that we need. But they're also feeling pinched and pressured by everyday ordinary folk who seem to hold these views. So that on the one hand, we're saying that people aren't being moved by moral leadership. And then on the other hand, we're saying moral leadership is absent because they're afraid of people. And so the question we have to ask ourselves, and I think Donnie's point really gets us to this, is what does Donald Trump stand for all of these folk? Why is this man who's so clearly flawed, and that's a generous description.
He's pushing back against arrogance and elitism from the coasts. He's the one that's fighting for them. They feel like we have been run over.
Think about the bullshit. This man is the biggest or one of the biggest real estate agents from New York City. The man owns skyscrapers, golf courses on the Florida coast, and fucking hotels and casinos primarily on the eastern seaboard. And then was the star of one of the biggest fucking reality shows. So he's basically New York and Hollywood. And had a bunch of celebrities on it. Just has all the fucking celebrity friends you could think of. Again, I get what he's saying, that's the narrative they're brought into, but just like all the other narratives, it's a fucking bold-faced lie. That's just crazy.
And ignored and mocked and ridiculed and forgotten for 50 years. Here's a guy that they can't beat. So he's going to go there.
Just to add to this real quickly, I don't think throughout his entire presidency, Donald Trump was willing to spend a night in Middle America. A night. Think about that, y'all. Most of us travel, right? And what do? We like to cross off the states we've been to. What do you want to do? You want to spend the night in Kansas City, go out for some barbecue, see what the bars and the nightlife is like, meet the people, go shopping at the markets, go to a show. See the unique custom. I heard they build butter sculptures in Wisconsin. I ain't eating one of them bitches, but I sure would like to check it out, see what that's like. That sounds like pretty interesting. Right? Donald Trump flew in on the jet, landed, got off, gave a rally speech without leaving the fucking tarmac. Got his ass back on the jet, flew back to the East Coast every single goddamn time. Middle America loves a motherfucker who would not spend a single night in the nicest provisions you could provide in Middle America if you fucking paid him to. He was the goddamn president. He would have had the best accommodations imaginable in some of the most major and nicest cities in the fucking world. That motherfucker is so elitist and so East Coast. He's like, nah. I'm flying in on the PJ. I'm flying out on the PJ. I will not stop for a meal in one of these flyover states. Crazy the delusion of these people.
And he's going to raise hell. He's going to do what we need. He's going. You know, it's like the first time in 50 years. It's wrestling. That their wrestler goes into the ring and slays.
Hey, at least I let you know, baby.
Guy, slays the arrogant. The arrogant people in the media, the arrogant people on campuses, the arrogant people that have looked down their noses at him and mocked him and ridiculed him for 50 years. That's what he
That's what I be telling people. I'm not an asshole. I just play one on TV. This motherfucker plays a hero, and he's literally the world's biggest dirtbag.
So is that 40% of the country?
Don't believe what you see on television, folks.
1% of the country, yeah. At least 43, 44% of the country.
Is there, bringing it also back to guns, you go, what's it going to take with guns? Is there anything? Is that so deeply entrenched in people's souls and cores?
No, it's not.
Is there anything that can happen that they'll let go of him? No, that they'll let go of Trump.
Of Trump?
Yeah. Is there anything? You go, what is the threshold?
I mean,
because you just.
I will say this. But first of all, I just want to say there's one evangelical. If you really want to read about this, Andy Stanley, who's Charles' son, but incredible pastor in Atlanta. From everything I hear, he's written a book. We had him on the show. That's talking about, hey, we got to get out of politics. The pews are emptying out. We got to get back to politics and get back to Jesus. That's his message. And let me just say, this foray into politics has been devastating for evangelicals. You look at whatever wins they've had in the political arena, they've had those same losses in attendance. The pews are emptying out. Kids, younger kids who are contemptuous of Donald Trump.
These are great points.
They're not going to a church that celebrates what he does. They're just not. And by the way, it would be the same thing if the church celebrated Joe Biden. You don't go to church for politics. You don't. You go there for Jesus. And they're not getting that. They're getting, like Andy Stanley says, all these Andy Stanley was like, man, during COVID, I had people that were equating the vaccine to Satan. And it's just like, man, they're looking at Chinese religious cult websites, and they're getting their news from that instead of the red letters of the New Testament. Because I've talked to some of these people, and Rev, they haven't read the Gospels in a really long time.
Well,
or maybe they have.
What you say is so important. Because the moral leaders.
How often do you think these motherfuckers read the Gospels?
Are trying to be politicians themselves. They wouldn't be worried about the reaction of those in the pews if they were saying, I'm here for what is right, not here for what is popular. Don't forget, Martin Luther King was denounced by his own denomination, and they formed another form of the Baptist church. The abolitionists were not part of the accepted church. You have to have moral leaders that stand up even against the religious institutions that are playing politics over what is right.
Now that is just such a confession out the mouth of a minister, bro. When is religion gonna make us better? He basically just told you right there, you have to have the moral leadership from outside the church with people who are willing to do the right thing, which is independent of any given church doctrine. And then they have to be willing to push back against church leadership who are fucking part of the problem. That is not a ringing endorsement for Christianity, my guy.
I think this is really fascinating. Really quickly, I just think all of that seems right.
Dog, can I just tell y'all how, like, as biologists, we make no moral, like, authority claims of our discipline, but we could literally just get so many of these basics right. Like, we could be like, yeah, humans don't thrive under conditions of slavery, so yeah. yeah, we can all just hold hands on that one. It's just so weird.
There's something else more fundamental, it seems to me, at stake, because it's not just simply arrogance, Joe. I think we're still dealing with the unresolved questions of the Civil War. Now, let me explain what I mean. The Civil War, of course, was between the South and the North. It had something to do with the place, the position. What will be the place of these enslaved people in American society, right? What will we do with these black folk, right? But that question actually presupposes a prior question. Who do we take ourselves to be as a nation? Are we a white nation in the vein of old Europe? Are we a nation of principle and ideas? And that question has always been at the heart of it, and it's not resolved. And so part of what we're dealing with is that the arrogance is the grievance, the fear, the anxiety. What Trump is bringing in tow is all of the underbelly of American society, which means that it's a deeply existential threat.
Yeah, same
that we face,
practically an atheist, the most Christians.
Obviously, I think that's the bigger part of Trumpism. I can just say in the church, I can only speak from my own experiences, that in First Baptist Church, Meridian, Mississippi, and First Baptist Church, Chamblee, Georgia, and First Baptist Church, Pensacola, Florida, my church in Tuscaloosa, Calvary Baptist Church in Tuscaloosa, race had nothing to do with any of it.
Yeah.
Just didn't.
Yeah.
Never heard one racist thing in any of those churches. And I say that to people, and they don't believe me.
Nope. Good for them.
But it's the case. What's that?
Good for them.
I'm one of those people that are doubting that. Help, I'm being honest with you. Race didn't have anything to do with it.
Race? No. I can tell you, I was in church 4 days a week. Like, Sunday, actually Sunday night training union, Wednesday night, Thursday night Bible study. I can just tell you, at least this was middle class.
Yeah, this is just such a problem right here. This is just, I mean, cool. I guess y'all just harmonize everything, but this is just, there's just no need. Well, I don't have anything. I don't even have a problem with this dude. I just think that is just such a. It's just a take that lacks a lot of nuance and depth to his awareness. It's just one of those I don't see color type of takes, which is like, all right, man, whatever. But that's the problem. This is exactly why we got to talk about Christianity and racism, because of dudes like this who just don't see it.
South America, if somebody said a racist comment in any of those places, you'd be turned on. I mean, and again, there is just my life, the arc of my life. I remember a kid said something racist when I was in Meridian, Mississippi at Northeast Elementary School. A kid said something racist in a line, called a little girl a name, and I remember a young teacher's aide grabbed him by the ear, said, "What did you say?" and then dragged him along the line. We were going into the cafeteria, dragged him along the line by his ear, and he was screaming the whole way, took him to the principal's office. We didn't see him for 3 days. This was in Mississippi in 1969.
Yeah.
In rural Mississippi in 1969.
Good
what
for that
message
teacher.
do you think that sent to the 45 kids that were in line? It wasn't socially acceptable. Again, now I know people doubt. I can only tell you my life.
Right.
I can only tell you my life. I'm not saying that people across the South and across America weren't saying racist things all the time. I'm just telling you, in the Baptist churches I went to across the Deep South, race wasn't a part of it. It was never part of the conversation. But I'll tell you what was: arrogance. Arrogance. Those people in New York looking down their noses at us. Those people in Washington thinking they're smarter than us. Those people in Hollywood mocking our values.
But that's what I hear. I hear these Christians looking down their nose at everybody else. And this church that is so not aware even of the sort of built-in prejudices of his faith, just seeing it as we don't see color in my church type of thing. It's just, I always like this guy's media coverage. It's a very interesting take.
Why do you think Passion of the Christ is one of the biggest movies ever? Because you know what everybody said? They finally made a movie about us.
Yeah. That movie was fucking horrifying. Holy shit, gang. MSNBC is just clueless. Just fucking clueless. All right, well, boom. That is our... Now the stage is set, gang. Like, we've got Trump today found guilty and liable for some wild shit. We got Christians on the right who won't get out of bed with them. Christians on the left or in the middle left who think that their Christianity and their particular churches don't have any sort of race issues. Yikes. All right, gang, time to jump into the main event. I hope everybody out there is good. Before we do so, I'm gonna get myself in the mode real quick. I really do appreciate everybody's support lately. It's been, I don't know, it's been kind of a crazy time because it's moving and a lot of shit going on. But we've been having a lot of fun lately. Really appreciate that. We are in Gather at the cafe. The link is pinned in the chat. It's also in the description. Feel free to join us. All right, cool. Airplane mode, y'all. Appreciate everybody. Cheers, gang. Hope you relax and having a good time at home. All right, let's get into this thing.
America needs a tidal wave of the old-time religion.
I have sinned against you.
How dare you! We have no need to doubt God.
The heart of Babylon is preparing the nations to receive the Antichrist.
I didn't even build that house with money from the church. I built it with money from my book. I don't make this stuff up.
Repenting of your sin.
It is a moral issue.
They got together and swore a pact to the devil.
I just enjoy seeing people worship, praising God.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Believe It or Not,
the show where we believe it.
Or
didn't we?
Did one.
Not today, Satan. Yeah.
On the day of recording this, it's International Puppy Day.
Is it?
Or Dog Day.
Right.
Yeah. Why isn't there's an International Dog Day, but no International White Males Day?
Well, that's racist.
Wow, that's true. I don't know if
it's the worst day.
I mean, they got a day for everything.
That's what I feel like every time people are saying,
right? Like they got Donut Day.
Yeah.
Why don't they got Straight White Male Day?
And why is there no straight pride
y'all have
parade?
every day.
That's true. Isn't that just a
y'all
parade?
have, we call that a calendar.
Parades, yeah.
Well, no, because parades are for everybody.
True. Yeah.
So that argument, yes. But no.
Yeah, but I mean, like, if you look at most parades, and we'll get into our topic in a second here, but a lot of them have fire trucks. And if you think about, like, who has calendars of firemen without their shirts on in their place? Straight men.
Right.
Because they're very proud and thankful for all the work that these shirtless firemen do.
True.
Every day.
Well, that's the thing, though. Firemen have been sexualized for years.
Yeah.
By everybody.
Yeah, and
I don't think that's fair.
No.
Yeah.
I think we need more ugly, unfit firefighters.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I have scientists and college professors, and I would just say that it's a lot to live up to know, to have excellent pedagogy and excellent research, and then, you know, people just throwing themselves at you. I'm not a piece of meat. Hashtag real researchers matter. Yeah.
With funny little hats. They always got those cool hats. Let's get them funny little hats.
And of course, ugly is
must
subjective.
be that white lab coat I never wear.
But I mean one that, like, undoubtedly, like, not even a mother would love.
Yeah.
Firefighters.
That's true. And get them a calendar.
Get them a calendar.
Yeah.
And if you don't buy it, you're probably an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
And you love buildings burning down.
Yeah. just the facts.
It's paying for their new hoses.
Yeah. But speaking of hoses and the earth flooding from water from the hose.
Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Moses or Noah left the tap running.
Have you seen Class of 07?
No.
Oh, it's so good.
What's this?
I watched it all in one sitting. All season 1 is out now. It's a show it's a high school reunion.
Mm-hmm.
Their high school, though, was on top of a mountain in Australia.
Oh,
and
okay.
while they're in the high school reunion, the earth is flooded, like Noah's Ark.
Oh.
And all of a sudden, their mountaintop school is a deserted island. And it's just like them. It was all girls school, too. So it's just like a bunch of women.
I see why you watched
who hated
this.
each other. Yeah, it's super sexy. Who hated each other in high school.
Yeah. And now they have to get
Now they
along
have
to
get
survive?
along to survive, yeah.
Where did you watch this?
It's on Prime, Amazon Prime.
Oh.
Yeah. Heard of it?
I have it, but I don't really watch anything. I'm very bad at using my subscriptions.
Same.
I just have them, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I finally canceled my Netflix.
Oh, yeah, I have.
Me
I set a
too.
reminder
I
to
canceled
cancel
Netflix. Hashtag
Paramount Plus
cancel
a couple
Netflix.
times,
Did.
and then I haven't.
Oh, definitely cancel
And then I saw a
Paramount
trailer
Plus,
for
bro.
something
Nobody's
and I
watching that
just
shit.
get on it.
Well, listen, I still want to watch
Look,
the new season. I
HBO
think
Max
we should
and roll.
leave.
That's all you need.
I'll get it for the month. I'll watch it.
HBO
come
Max and
over here.
relax.
I could do that too.
That's the way to go.
Or I'll just tell you about it. I'll watch it, tell you all about it.
That sounds like the worst day of my life.
That'd be like when we were roommates all over again when I'd come out of
At
my
least
room.
I'd seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I bet you that's why they changed the name. By the way, HBO Max is changing its name to just Max, and that's why they did it. They did that so they could just get the Max and relax thing going.
Being referenced when you've seen it, you're like, okay, we're both in on it.
Yeah.
But just being referenced and you don't know what the fuck someone's talking about, and then you just get like a weird half retelling of it, you're like, no, just don't. I'd rather not know anything.
Yeah.
I'd rather be dead.
Yeah, you
But
don't see
speaking
a lot of
the world
diversity
flooding,
in
there was a
in
story in the
science,
Bible
Logan.
about Noah.
I've heard of it.
And then after the
I'm glad you
ark
noticed.
landed,
That's an important
Noah
step.
landed on a mountain. Ararat. He built himself a vineyard and he drank some wine, and he got a little toasty. He got a little drunk and started wandering around naked.
Oh, I've heard this. Yeah,
Yeah.
he got butt ass naked.
And then one of his sons, Ham, laughed at him. So God said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants. He shall be to his brothers." And then he also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be his servants. May God enlarge Jephthah. May he live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant." So this is obviously something written later when they're like, we hate the Canaanites, so we're going to say that God cursed them. But you know how people are. Eventually, when America had its slavery, they used this verse to say that actually it was talking about black people.
Right. Yes, I have heard this before. I've heard this argument before.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right, so let's make sure
It's
we've
pretty
got our head wrapped around this fucking story. I think I got a little thing on that in here. It might be long, though. Is it long? No, it's not. It's perfectly short. Beautiful.
Part of the problem was that Christian abolitionists had an issue when advocating for the end of slavery. You see, if they wanted to use the Bible never explicitly repudiates slavery. Indeed, many of the godliest people who Christians look up to as an example, they held slaves themselves according to the biblical record. Now, Southern Christians exploited this fact.
Same with their founding heroic holy fathers of America.
To defend American race-based chattel slavery. Not only did the Bible not condemn slavery, but it actually provided guidelines for the regulation and practice of enslavement. So Southern slaveholders challenged abolitionists to cite chapter and verse where the Bible explicitly condemned slavery as wrong. And therefore, the Civil War actually became a battle of how to interpret the Bible. For example, Southern Methodist preacher J.W. Tucker wrote in 1862, "Your cause is the cause of God." He's talking to the Confederates. "The cause of Christ, of humanity. It's a conflict of truth with error, of Bible with Northern infidelity, of pure Christianity with Northern fanaticism." It made acceptance of race-based chattel slavery a requirement of biblical orthodoxy. In other words, if you want to be a good Christian who believed the Bible, then you had to advocate slavery. This was put forth very eloquently in a theological work by a man named Robert Louis Dabney. He was a Southern Presbyterian minister, and he directly served General Stonewall Jackson. And he wrote a book called A Defense of Virginia and Through Her of the South, which was published just after the Civil War in 1867. In that book, he used passages from the Old and New Testament to explain why supposedly the North got it wrong on slavery and why the South's defense of slavery was justified. He said, was it nothing that this black race, morally inferior, should be brought into close relations with a nobler race, meaning white people? Dabney said that black people tend toward lying, theft, drunkenness, laziness, and waste if left on their own. He then went on to explain the supposed benefits of slavery. It introduced Africans to Christianity. And he says, and above all, was it nothing that enslaved blacks should be brought by the relation of servitude, meaning slavery, under the conscience and Christian zeal of a Christian people, meaning white people. You see, in Dabney's mind, the gentle ministrations of the whip had the salutary effect of commending Christianity to black people. Never mind the fact that Christianity had long been in Africa prior to that, and perhaps there could have been more effective ways to evangelize non-Christian people than through enslavement. Now, had Dabney personally experienced slavery, he might have come to a different conclusion about it as an evangelistic mechanism. As we talk about the Civil War and Christian defenses of slavery and fighting on the side of the Confederacy, it should give every citizen and Christian in the United States pause to consider how strongly ingrained the support for slavery in our country was. People believed in the enslavement of black people so strongly that they were willing to form another country, fight a war, and die to defend it. And throughout it all, Christian leaders and lay people alike looked to the Bible to justify their pro-slavery stance. And they made sophisticated theological arguments for it and believed that God was on their side.
All right, that's not exactly where I thought he was going with that, but it was so good. All right, here we go.
Funny that the whole thing is based around someone laughing at their naked dad being drunk. I feel like, if anything, this just sounds like it was a defense mechanism. Like, he didn't know how to like, how would you react if you saw your drunk dad dancing around naked? Hey, Carol, good to see you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been a while. But
I feel like I'd be shocked. I think laughter is a reasonable kind of like surprised.
You see love, you know, like
okay, maybe we should not have opened a vineyard.
Yeah, and I also get it from Noah's perspective too, because
he just wanted to get shit-faced.
He wanted to get shit-faced.
Yeah,
the world had pretty much ended.
Yeah,
and also sometimes when you drink, it's a little clothy. And you're like, man, is it clothy in here?
Well, you get overheated, and you know you got to cool off somehow.
Exactly.
But also, why is God getting mad at the guys? Like, shouldn't he be mad at Noah for getting shit-faced and naked?
He got mad at the son, this one son, and then the other sons were like, "Oh, we'll cover him up, and it's fine."
It's pretty bad that laughing is worse than being hammered, drunk, and naked. Because I'm gonna say, in today's society, it's the opposite.
And
yep.
You
can't get drunk and naked anywhere except your own home. And even then, depends.
Yeah. And then, so it was used for many years. This guy by the name of James Henley Thornwell was a pastor, and in the 1800s, and so through the Civil War and everything. And then after the Civil War, still, he's like, no. Oh, wait, when did the Civil War end? 1865?
Gang, I'm popping some marijuana gummies.
So I guess during the Civil War, he said
probably sometime in there.
As long as that African race, it's in parentheses, so I don't know what he actually said. Race, in its comparative degradation, coexisted side by side with the white. Bondage in its normal condition. Thornwell was he was a slave owner, and then he said the relationship of master and slave stands on the same foot with other relationships in life, or relations of life. So he took that.
Right.
He was a preacher who was like going around saying it's okay to own slaves, even if you're a Christian. And he also used the New Testament where and a lot of people at this time did as well, use the New Testament where it says where Paul says that slaves obey your masters, and that they took that to be an endorsement of slavery. And now I want to point out too that we have done an episode before about the Christian and slavery, but I wanted to focus, bring it to racism, and we'll talk more about how it's spread to today. But
fair. What's the context again of the slaves obey your masters line? What is the greater context of that?
Of things that you're supposed to do to like show how godly you are to other people around you. So basically, if you're a wife, you're supposed to submit to your husband. If you're a servant, or a slave, you're supposed to obey your master. Like any kind of position of authority, you're supposed to do it to the glory of God. It's still shitty.
I mean,
it is shitty.
I don't want to be like offensive, but it just sounds like it wants you to be a bitch.
Yeah. And not in a derogatory sense, but
you know what I mean, right? Like it just wants you to be like, it just wants you to shut up, and obey, and that's not okay. How is that being godly? That just sounds like you're being weak, and just allowing shit to happen to you.
Exactly.
But I guess that's what they want, right?
Yeah.
Also, too, when you were saying about when it said African in parentheses, it was because it didn't have the context there, so they put it in there to delineate.
I mean, it's like whatever you're into in the bedroom, you know.
Oh, because he says that.
We're not here to.
Yeah, so he would have said as long as that race, but it's saying they're referring to the African race here.
Yes, true.
If a collar means more to you than a diamond ring,
there's
like
been a lot of Christians throughout the years who were abolitionists and were fighting against slavery.
Right.
But they were going against other Christians. So a lot of people will identify with like, oh, well, I would have been on this side or whatever. But it did, even early on, the Quakers and the Shakers are famous for being abolitionists, but they had to be convinced. Like Quakers had slaves. And then it was like an inner struggle.
It's like, how is slavery this hard for people to figure out?
People being like, no, yes, no. And then they're fighting back and forth, probably using the curse of ham. And then this guy named Benjamin Lay would protest outside of each church service by standing in the snow in bare feet to show like how you're treating your slaves, and then we're supposed to treat others as we would want to be treated ourselves.
Yeah, which is amazing that the mental gymnastics that people go through to try and justify owning people.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And I understand why it's in the Bible times and why it's referred to it, because there was definitely a lot of different instances of it, and I'm sure they were just like, we need to talk about this with what's happening in the world.
And it's like, there's a lot of times where people like argue for slavery in the Bible and say, well, it was just the context of its time or whatever, as in like, which is true.
Yes.
But also, you can't claim then that it's a divine book. You can't claim that it's from heaven if it's being okay with.
It's either from its time or it's timeless.
Yeah.
Which one is it?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And then, when slavery ended, it's not like racism ended. So
it didn't?
No, we're okay. And then segregation, when that's happening, again, it's a head-to-head of people saying like segregation's bad or segregation's not bad, and it's Christians who are divided again. And then this one fella, a pastor named Henry Lyon Jr., in 1961 said, ladies and gentlemen, for 15 years I've had the privilege of being a pastor of a white Baptist church in this city. If we stand 100 years from now, it will still be a white church. I am a believer in separation of the races, and I am nonetheless a Christian.
I also just want to keep it. I also just want to keep it a buck. The bigots always win, from my perspective. Because if the quote unquote right thing is for us to create like a, harmonious, more equitable society, we've just never done that. So Americans, I don't even know actually like what the number is. Let's ask. How long did Americans own slaves? I don't even know what
well, the hundreds of thousands of years we haven't been around. Nobody. I didn't ask. All right, so let's say at least a couple hundred years, right? People owned slaves, right? So we like to look at it as like, owning slaves is certainly wrong. So, yeah, unfortunately, people did, but then we fixed it, and now, right? That's not the reality. Like, we still tolerate slavery. We've tried to cover this. A lot of people aren't aware, but there's more people in slavery now than there was then. So people still own slaves. And even the type of legal chattel American slavery, like that existed for hundreds of years. And then it took a war, like they said, a war. People were going to fight a war to keep slavery around. And then there was segregation. And segregation happened. People tolerated segregation. And then even now, we tolerate the economic disenfranchisement of black people. We tolerate a racist criminal justice system. We tolerate the murder of black people for the most petty, legal and personal offenses, actual or even perceived. We tolerate racist dog whistling on the internet when we're not tolerating like outright nigger bombing black content creators. Right? It's just important to like put that reality, because that's what people have to live through. Right? It's one of the things I've been becoming more aware of is like, who's the fucking star of the stories we're telling? Because sometimes it feels like the star is sort of us and our 2023 sensibilities from whatever place of privilege allows us to hang out on YouTubes for a few hours at night. Whereas, like, I don't think the story of like a slave, right, sitting here next to me, if there's like an actual slave from like, say, one of my ancestors that was enslaved, right, they wouldn't feel that victory. They're like, no, bro, like, I'm a fucking slave. You understand what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, it's just important because like I just wonder how different the world would be, right? Like, if instead of us feeling good, if people were like, yo, they're redlining, and I looked at the maps and that shit is racist as fuck. And then people were like, no, I'm sorry, I can't stand for this. Like, it'd be so different.
Friggin' applauded and said, good for you, good buddy.
Did Jesus ever say anything about that?
I mean, you could argue Jesus was a bit racist because he did say, "I came for the Jews first, and then the rest." Or he did like, "I guess I'll help a Samaritan," and then he also told the story of the Good Samaritan, which is kind of offensive.
Was that
itself.
A spin-off of the Good Doctor?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
makes
spin-off.
sense.
Yeah, the Good Samaritan. Because there's the Good Lawyer now, right?
Oh, is there?
Then, yeah.
Is he also?
She, I think.
Oh, she. Are they also?
I just saw a teaser, so I don't know.
Is he? He's on the spectrum?
Yeah,
is that what it is?
That's what it is.
Is this lawyer also on the spectrum?
I think so. Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Okay.
I've only saw a quick teaser. Maybe it's not even related.
Maybe.
Because it's not like The Good Wife is about an autistic wife.
It should be.
Yeah.
It's the whole good universe.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. That's wild.
Yeah. So his church had over 3,000 members, too. So it was, yeah. And, but then the thing is, what's his name? Billy Graham?
Yep.
He was against segregation, and he did, speak out against it. But, I mean, obviously he's famous for saying negative things about the Jews in the secret recording. But also he took less of a stance when he was in southern states because he didn't like being too divisive.
Yep.
And he was very wishy-washy.
That's
depending on where he
so
was, 'cause
calculated.
His thing was all like, well, it's about the
it's just a
gospel
grifter.
first.
So it's almost like he probably didn't actually believe it, and he was just using whatever is going to get him the most attention.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what it is?
And he had, so we had Martin Luther King Jr. speak at one of his rallies at Madison Square Gardens, but he wouldn't fully endorse him. So he's like, I like him. I like some of the stuff he does, but we don't agree on everything. So he wouldn't like fully embrace the civil rights movement, but he had like,
weird.
seedlings of
And again,
like, or saying he believed in what they're doing,
poking
but
holes
not
at the
like
person
a fully
instead
support thing.
supporting the movement.
Yeah.
Such a big
Which I think
thing
is
to
something
do.
you see a lot now with churches who talk about Black Lives Matter.
Just think about it, gang. It's the same thing that we got from the alt-right playbook about, oh, I agree with your cause, but I don't like your means, right? Like, oh yeah, we do need to reform policing, but defund the police. Oh yeah, I'm out. Just because I don't like that language. So yeah, sorry, we're done. Nothing to see here. You can do the same thing where it's, oh yeah, I support. I'm not a bigot, but I just don't like the representatives of progress. I don't like this particular person who speaks out about racism. I don't like this particular voice for the LGBTQ community. I don't like this particular example of unionization. Right, like that's fucking nonsense.
A lot of churches are very outspoken against Black Lives Matter, and then other ones will be like, "Well, I like some of the principles. I just think the organization is bad, or whatever."
Yeah, I've heard that argument a lot too.
Yeah, but I think that Black lives do matter. That's my stance on it.
Well, I'm glad we clarified that.
Yeah. Also, the Second Great Awakening. We're going back and forth here. Was way before the segregation, but that caused a lot of Christians to become abolitionists. But at the same time, they were like abolitionists as far as like we shouldn't own slaves, but also like, but once we don't own them, we're not going to give them rights.
No. They have to figure that out themselves.
Yeah. So they were very much like, and Lincoln was the same way.
Yeah,
like,
Logan, that's
they shouldn't be
crazy.
slaves, but they are inferior. Like it was very, he was still very racist.
Well, I mean, they've always been that way. Like they're still that way with like, not to like equate the two, but I feel like pro-life is a very similar thing where it's just like, no, we care about this issue, but then as soon as they're born, they don't care about this issue.
Yep.
And the same kind of things. Like we care about your freedom, but then as soon as you have it, it's like, we don't care about your freedom.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah. And,
they're only going halfway.
Yeah. Yeah. And Martin Luther King once said that.
And I want to speak to this too because this is part of a structural racism issue that I feel I experience now at the church. I didn't understand it, but now I do. So I'm gonna try to walk y'all through this. Think about how, because when I grew up, people like Gandhi, Mother Teresa, I was like really big on those, right? Because they were sort of popular social heroes that stood for, some sort of like global social justice or whatever, right? But, part of my journey into skepticism was like Christopher Hitchens destroying all my heroes, right? And, sort of coming to understand why he would say somebody like Mother Teresa was a friend of poverty, but not a friend of the poor. Because rather than, facilitate an exchange of resources from concerned individuals to meet the material needs to alleviate the conditions, it was like, hey, let's get money to the organization, and for these people, their suffering is a blessing and an instrument. Like, it was crazy, right? And Gandhi kind of did a similar thing where it became no longer about alleviating poverty from people. You can think about missionary. We was listening to a podcast about missionary work the other day, right? Like, the fact that missionaries will be going places, they'll go to some village for like 50, 60 years. There's all this commerce of funding missions, flying the missionaries over there and shit, but they never materially change the conditions of the people, right? Well, to me, that's what Christians are signing off on in America. Like they're patting themselves on the back. Ha ha, we got rid of slavery. Ha ha, we dealt with segregation. Ha ha, we were on the right side of the civil rights movement. And we're like, well, where the fuck are you at trying to materially improve the living conditions of people of color? Nowhere, right? You're just like insisting that we turn and get us some more Jesus, instead of acknowledging that Jesus apparently was incapable of convincing people that they shouldn't own slaves or segregate people. So to me, there's a structural racism inherent in presenting yourself as a moral superior based on the way you treat others, and then not actually supporting the policies and changes necessary to materially improve people's well-being. It's why COVID is the killer of all faiths, or Christianity at least. Because think about it, y'all. These churches, and I'm just going to talk general, and if you went to some special exception, good for you. But churches are always about, I'm going to get up here on Sunday morning and preach about, you know, a serious problem in the world and whatever the fuck it is. And so you had all these churches that were like ignoring regulations. Oh, we're just going to go to church anyway. Oh, we're going to do a thing. Churches became, you know, the epicenters of, you know, some outbreaks. And beyond just the shamefulness of the churches that did that, there was the larger shame of the churches, and this is where I think even more churches were complicit in this, not saying anything about it. Like you're gonna get up on Sunday morning. It's like the same thing with child abuse in church, right? So you're gonna get up on Sunday morning and preach about what? People masturbating, people, you know, lusting over somebody else's spouse, you know, people being too materialistic, trying to keep up with like it just to me it just made the concerns of the church seem so petty in light of all of the shit going on in the real world that they wouldn't talk about. And I was just like, man, this is whack 'em out. But I just wanted to draw that connection so people don't think I'm just shaming on the churches that did the crazy shit. I'm mostly realizing that there's moral bankruptcy in the churches that didn't say anything about it, because that's not the type of topic that pulls the heartstrings of Christians in the direction they wanted them pulled.
Sunday morning is the most segregated.
There it is. Boom.
So, like,
what about that?
like
Boom,
all over
right
the country
there.
And all over the world, churches are segregated.
And then tell me Christianity's not racist.
That's
Like, well,
still
then
the case
why don't y'all
today.
worship together?
Like,
Churches are still segregated?
Churches are still very segregated. A lot of churches, not every church, obviously, but like a lot of times, there's the white church and there's the black church.
And I got to say this too. Like, I went to what I feel is like a segregated church because it wasn't racist. It wasn't like in the bylaws that black people couldn't be there. Obviously, I was on a worship team, but literally it was like me, and there was like one black family that was like really active. Any other time you saw a person of color, they were probably a guest. And the thing that I would say reflecting on that is they weren't people who in their hearts had anything against having more diversity in church. Like, they wanted it. Like, they would talk about it, and they were happy to have, you know, anybody around they saw us, but they insisted on being the whiteiest of the white. And that was the problem, was they couldn't see their whiteness. And so they couldn't understand because they were super nice people. Like if you met them, you'd be like, oh, this is a church that should have no problem getting diversity because these are just really cool, nice people. But you have to see how your culture is infused in everything you do. That way you can understand how you may be able to switch things up to make it more inclusive. Like to me, I was like, yo, if you just throw in like a gospel number once in a while, right? It would be a huge thing because we have musicians that can play. We do regularly get like diverse visitors, but a lot of them don't come back because a lot of churches are doing much more to actually like be culturally inclusive. So they do a gospel number once in a while that people are like, oh, yo, I really enjoyed that song they played. That was cool. Or they'll do like the Spanish version of a song or like a Spanish verse to a song. They'll just throw it up, if not a whole Spanish service. But a lot of those little changes, making sure you have diverse members or visitors to your congregation, like preparing meals and stuff. That way, when you come to like a big potluck, people feel like, there's some flavor in the mix. There's a lot of stuff you notice that I really was like, oh, like these people really want diversity. They just don't realize how painfully white they are.
Wouldn't say it anymore that, hey, this is just a white church, but that's the way it works out. There was a pastor I was reading about in Sheffield in the UK who resigned because he realized that when he started the church, he wanted it to be multicultural. And then eventually it was, there wasn't a lot of white people. So he started pushing for more white people. So he would like have all the ads for the church, like the flyers and stuff, only have white people in it. And he only wanted people on stage who were white because he just wanted to attract more white people, because he thought it would be like,
that's
like,
wild.
It's not multicultural if there's barely any white people. And then he's like, somebody called him out on it for being super racist, and he's like, oh, yep, that's super racist. And he resigned and moved back to Australia. I mean, at least he admitted it, but still, like, don't be super racist. Yeah. A survey conducted in 2018 said that Christians are 30% more likely to say that monuments of Confederate soldiers are symbols of Southern pride rather than symbols of racism. And 20% more likely to disagree with the statement, generations of slavery and discrimination have created conditions that make it difficult for blacks to work their way out of lower class. And
see, my issue with that distinction between the two, of it being Southern pride rather than racism, is a lot of the people that they're having this Southern pride in were huge racists who did really terrible racist things. And that's the issue. That
it's just, do you like it straight or coded? Do you like it? Do you like it straight up or coded?
Maybe I don't know. Is it this is that people don't want to have to confront their terrible past and be like, oh yeah, those guys that we used to look up to were bad people.
Yeah, people, like, they're like, well, look at all this good stuff he did. It's like, yeah, but he also fought to keep slaves.
But also, like, why do you fucking care about a statue? Who gives a shit? I mean, it's the same thing, saying, like, they're getting rid of Christmas. You can't say Merry Christmas anymore. I was like, you can.
Yeah.
You can still talk about these people. They're still there. It's just in public spaces where more than just you exist.
Yeah.
And, some people who see this and think like, oh, this is the guy who caused generations of trauma for millions of people and my family.
Yeah.
Of course I don't want to go to the park and have to look at this fucking asshole.
Exactly. And like the whole argument where it's like,
yo, the New South, man, it's some real shit.
No, you're not.
We still have history.
And it's the same thing.
So how about this? Why don't we put up?
That's what I'm saying. And like, and to me, the whole God, guns, and country thing is just coded racism. Because there's structural racism built into all of those, right? Into the God, into country's racist and bigoted past and institutionalization and sort of the patriotic, the patriotic sort of, I don't know what the right word, the patriotic sort of aesthetic has never really, people of color have never been the face of patriotism, right? It's flat out. And then guns, that's all about arming against us, not having us armed. And we should even get into structural shit about that sometime, because like it plays, I think, even a role into like mental health and shit. So yeah.
Of Hitler in the park right now.
Well, because you have to, because otherwise you're erasing history. So,
I'm German.
Yeah.
It's my history.
Yeah.
And I'm proud to be German.
And
if you say otherwise, you're a fucking racist.
And my uncle tried to kill Hitler.
Really?
He didn't get very far.
I had to fight your uncle.
Oh. So let's see. 88% of Protestant churches agree that they should strive for racial diversity, but that's also a very vague statement.
Yeah.
Because 76% of Protestant pastors surveyed said that their church is predominantly one racial or ethnic group.
Right.
So it's like 88% want it, but
that's
76%
crazy.
Don't have it. There's also so 29% of pastors surveyed said that critical race theory poses a bigger threat to Christianity than racism.
Oh, suck my ass.
Oh,
fuck
my
these
goodness.
people. They don't know what critical race theory is. They have no fucking clue. They think...
Wow.
And it's not even something that is really talked about.
No.
It's not a thing that most people are going to encounter.
Yes, and we have Nazis out here running around trying to tell us that racism is not that big of a deal. And we have got to be on alert for these wilding out people saying crazy shit.
It's not really taught in schools for children, first of all.
Yeah.
So shut the fuck up.
It's culture war fear mongering. It's like an invisible enemy because it doesn't exist. There was one protest where recently, I think it was Walter
Matthau.
Walter Matthau. What's his name? A really great guy. I'll put the name on the screen, but he does a lot of trolling of things like that.
Right.
Matheson, maybe? Matty Matheson? No. But he went to this one school board meeting with just a really nice group of people on the school board, and then a bunch of people just angry that they were teaching critical race theory.
Right.
And they're like, but we have a little unit in social studies about diversity. It's not a thing.
But I mean, Pete, that's what the religious, well, I don't want to say religious right, but the religious right, that's what they do though. They did the same thing in Ontario a few years ago with the sex ed curriculum.
Yeah.
Where the whole thing was we don't want to teach our kindergarten kids about gay people. And it's just that's not, well, first of all, that's not what the curriculum is.
Yeah.
The curriculum starts out in kindergarten, and it's a progressive thing that starts with teaching consent.
Yeah.
Like no means no, things like that. It's not they're in kindergarten, let's teach them about anal sex and, making sure to wear a condom.
That's at least third grade.
Yeah, but I'm saying, that's what it was. And then... also, why shouldn't we teach kindergarten children about gay people? That's
exactly.
They're fucking people.
Yeah.
So
we teach them about straight people all the time. So, yeah.
That aside, a big thing about it, and what I heard at the time was that a lot of church communities were pushing that. It was we shouldn't be teaching this. And they were pushing a lot of immigrant communities and a lot of heavy religious communities that this is bad for the children and everything without actually talking about what the curriculum was.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course the congregations are going to listen to that because that's their kind of touch point of what's happening in the world and in their community without actually doing any research of themselves, whether or not they
progressive is a cuss word,
can or will do
and
that, right?
woke,
and that's what, and it's the same kind of thing with critical race theory.
Yeah.
Where it's people who
they're trying to make ally
don't
a bad
know what
word.
they're talking about, but they're being told by their people who should be who are in a place of authority for them just total misinformation.
Yeah. And that now the word is woke. The word that everybody's afraid of is woke. It's like constant like
Right.
what's the boogeyman this week?
Yep.
Like the woman who was talking about wokeness on the news, and someone was
Right.
like, "Can you just define that?" And she like, totally dissolved.
It's buzzwords.
Yeah.
It's what can they rally people behind and get them mad at, so
Yeah.
you're not actually focusing on the real fucking issues.
Exactly. Oh yeah.
It's a smokescreen.
Exactly. And
But
then,
this shit is racist, right? All of this is rooted in racism, misogyny, homophobia, just the common run-of-the-mill bigotries. And that's what, right? That's what weaponizing against woke is. And that's why this is so problematic. Because that's well within the Overton window. Right? It's perfectly okay for me to show up as some douchebag across the screen for Stephanie Helms and just say, "Hey, I'm here because I don't understand woke," you know, and I just think we've gone too far with the cancel culture just because we have a difference of opinion about politics, right? And it's like, bro, that's just racist. Right? And if you respond to it like that, as y'all see, motherfuckers out here tripping on you because, whoa, the one thing that's been pushed out of the Overton window is apparently you can't call anybody a racist anymore. Like you want to talk about politically incorrect. So that's why all this is problematic, because even that's always my thing is like I'm with Stephanie and Maya in the sense that you need to check your calling yourself an allyship at the door and make sure that you're in line with, what marginalized people are telling you they need. But I'm also from that time when it was important to identify yourself as an ally so people knew who the fuck they were safe with. And also, if they identify you as an ally, hey, I consider so-and-so an ally. I thought so-and-so was an ally. I can count on so-and-so to be on our side. Then it's a real problem when they create a political climate that people run away from that, especially to avoid any accountability. So when somebody who wants the support of marginalized groups and is trying to bring a voice to the table, then excuses themselves like, oh, well, I never claimed to be an ally. I'm about it. This shit. I'm like, that's bigoted as fuck. I don't see, you see what I'm saying? Right? Like, that's become such a acceptable, polite way for somebody to excuse themselves from accountability. And it's all because of the language we're comfortable using, the culture that we're comfortable using in the culture. But if you think about what a person is saying, they're like, oh yeah, well, hey, you can't hold me accountable for doing problematic shit, and I never promised I'd never do anything bigoted because I never claimed I wasn't gonna be. I never claimed I was gonna be one of them allies you can rely on with your woke ass. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, bro, that's just bigoted as fuck. Like, it's literally like somebody getting their ass whooped and you're watching across the street and be like, well, I never said we were friends. Right? Like, yeah, I mean, we hang out and play some fucking games together here and there. And yeah, so we kicked it and had pizza the other week. But I mean, I never said we were friends, right? Like, and that I would have your back, right? Like, I mean, that's what I hear, and I'm just like, that's not okay. So that's what's going on. Why all this shit is incredibly racist to me, because all of this language is meant to cut off marginalized groups from the resources we need, and in this case, primarily the human resources that we need.
Yeah, Black Lives Matter, like we talked about, was another thing. Pastors just going on stage, just trying to destroy George Floyd's character and like things like that. Where
a guy who was fucking murdered by the police and stuff like that. Yeah, like what are you doing? Why what are you fucking doing?
Yeah, exactly. And I find because I watch a lot of sermons for fun. But a lot of times, even when they have a pro Black Lives Matter stance,
right?
A lot of times but also there's really good police, and also yes, we need some police reform, but also there's a lot of really good cops out there, and blah blah blah.
I don't buy that.
Yeah. It's I'll call you a cab.
Always carry a Bible.
Exactly.
Exactly,
So,
Stephanie.
And then a big thing a lot of people talk about. I think I should have written down. I think I got this from the Times, but they were talking about or Time Magazine. Sorry, they were talking about the theology of inaction.
shouldn't have to
and that's
care
something
about
that's
that.
been going on for a long time. Where like Billy Graham said, it's about the gospel, right? It's a great way to get out of any difficult conversation when it comes to race or any sort of social justice issue.
Right.
Is we say. The main line is we got to tell people about Jesus and show the love of Jesus. It's like, yeah, maybe the best way to show the love of Jesus is to
Be a
help
good
stop
fucking
racism.
person. Yeah. Well, my thing about this, sorry, I'm just kind of peeking over at your thing.
go
We're
for
saying
it.
working for racial justice and contrast may be seen as a political issue. Then maybe you should get out of fucking politics, you fucking assholes. Stop trying to railroad your ideals into the political discourse.
Yeah.
Stop pumping money into your politicians and your lobby groups so you can get your hateful, discriminatory, and just damaging views put across.
Yeah.
The fact that we are having new abortion bans going on and they are limiting LGBTQ plus rights, and the fact that a big issue is fucking drag story hour.
Yeah.
Like, what is wrong with you people?
Yeah, exactly. And even was it Tennessee where they're passing that law, or they're trying to get a law that just takes one district that is a mostly minority, mostly black district, and trying to make it so that in that district, judges are appointed by the government.
Are you
Every other
serious?
district, it's by voting. Like it's
Really?
Yeah, so they get
they're
to
trying to
appoint
pass a bill that just
racist judges over
they're calling
black
it the
districts.
new Jim Crow. Like it is.
Yeah,
like,
they're fucking redlining them here. Like, what the hell?
Yeah. Like
I hadn't heard about
blatantly
that.
But look, this is just more shit, right? Put us all in one district with, one inconvenient ass box to tally to actually vote in the worst inconvenient location in it. To come up with some fucked ass laws so that mostly Republican controlled state house will be able to now take away that community's ability to even elect its own judges. I mean, this is what I mean about that feeling that at the end of the day, the other side wins. That feeling that these things just happen. And people sit around and complain about it, but this is where we're at. Like, it's still okay to do this shit. And you can still get away with it in 2023. And again, it's like, people say they'll let you know when they've seen enough. Trust me, they've never seen enough.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of the voter suppression laws that they're trying to pass now are blatantly racist.
Oh, God, so much of it is, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of it is supported by Christians. Like, it's, yeah.
The sad part is, it's like, again, I think it is because their churches tell them, like, well, this is the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so much of it is also too like, it's like, well, if they just did this, then it'd be fine. It's just like, if you get pulled over by a cop, it's like, just do what they say and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, what about all the people who did do what they say and then they ended up dying?
Yeah, like the one
Right?
guy, because they're like, well, if you have a gun in your vehicle, just let them know. But that one guy, he's like, just so you know, I have a license to carry. It's in my glove compartment. And
That
they shot
video
him,
that-
immediately.
There was a video about that recently, about a guy who was saying that he had a gun in his thing, and then the cop got nervous and pulled a gun on him too. Like that. This happens every day.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know what you want. Like, you can do all the right things and still be killed. So no wonder they're not going to want to do those good things. Why would you respect authority? Why would you think that these people are on their side when we just hear countless stories about how these people aren't on their side?
Yeah.
Serve and protect is a slogan. It doesn't mean anything. That is not what they're there to do.
Yeah.
They're there to protect property and the interests of business owners.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
And if you think that they're there for anything else, you're deluding yourself.
I gotta say, these dudes are pretty base. When I pulled this up, because I didn't, you know me, gang. I like to have a little something on the line. I didn't know where everybody was going with these things, and I started to think like, two cishet white dudes sitting here talking about racism and Christianity. Like, is this gonna be the payoff I wanted? But we're rolling through this thing, gang. I actually think this has been a pretty based conversation. And that last take, that the police are really there to protect property in the interest of property owners, like, that's some big thing flying Wayne shit right there. You know, that's a take fresh out of the mouth of Wayne. So, and this is what I mean. Like, these are two dudes that have clearly taken up the challenge of what I would consider, at least so far, being relatively well informed about these things, and then being willing to take on getting practiced at it, like talk about the issues, you know, get feedback on how you discuss it with the issues, do some more education, you know, put yourself back out there. It's just important. I want to like encourage people, like, people got to do better. That's the only way. Like, if me and Maya are the only two people out here talking about racism, like, shit's never gonna fucking change. So, like, don't be scared. Like, just get out there and do it. And before you know it, you'll be out here with woke ass base takes, and fucking marginalized people be cheering you on. Well, and yeah, you might slip up every once in a while, but trust me, people will be happy to celebrate genuine advocacy.
It's like when we did the episode about slavery, somebody pointed out in the comments that, like, slavery hasn't been abolished in America.
No. The prison system is still a huge...
Yes.
It's insane.
Yes.
And so, the prison system is predominantly
This dude's
black.
reading my fucking production
because
notes?
of racism. And, yeah, and they can still be slaves. So it's insane.
Well, the big problem there... Well, exactly. It's all... Because, first of all, the big problem is you have for-profit prisons, which is... bananas.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, like, if you actually genuinely cared about justice and you cared about rehabilitation and things like that, you would not have a for-profit prison. No. It's the same reason we shouldn't. Everything's just kind of tying together. It's the same kind of things where we're getting into. There's a lot of issues in Ontario right now where they're talking about privatizing healthcare, which is fucking nuts.
Yeah.
And I hate Doug Ford. I hate what he's doing. I hate everything that he's trying to pass, because all it's doing, it's dismantling our social services. Yeah. It's weakening us as a province, and it's ruining our future. And the fact that the federal government doesn't seem to be able to do anything about it is also crazy to me.
Yeah.
Like, you're same thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm getting upset about this now.
Yeah, and voting, I think, is so important too. Like,
I agree.
Yeah, like the fact that barely anybody voted in the last provincial election.
That's what pisses me off so much too, is because I have been voting and I have been paying attention to this, and the fact that you see the numbers are so low, it's so easy to just feel like how futile it is. But then you hear so many people complain about it. It's like, well, did you vote?
Yeah.
Did you get out there and fucking do something?
Yeah.
Then shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Because it's because of you, and you say, well, I didn't think it would matter. It's like, well, it does matter.
It's the
You not going
worst.
out there makes it worse for everybody.
Yeah.
You not voting is making a choice, and that choice is
voting
to
is
allow
so easy
pieces
for
of
most
shit
of
to
us.
get into office and do terrible things that hurt other people.
Yeah. When my friend was a pastor, I was there at the service, but it was so funny because he was on stage and he was talking about something different, but then he used voting as an analogy. But he goes, "Well, it's like they say, if you don't vote, you can't bitch." And then immediately realized what he said and was not allowed to speak at church for like a year.
I think it's a great point. I agree with it, but maybe not the right place to say it.
Yeah.
But
he's not a pastor anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
He was a pastor in the past.
Yeah,
past pastor.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm working on a video now. It might be out by the time this comes out. It might be out shortly after this comes out. But that's what kind of sparked this for me. Is just like there's so much racism that I wanted to talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this ties into about the video about mission trips, and I think that's another
fair.
thing.
Check out the
racism
Believe It or
and
Not
mission trips is
podcast
like-
about missions work.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
really good.
It's
That was really good.
that white saviorism. It's disgusting.
It's I think it's on this list, or it was at least. What? It was one we. It was. I just want to make sure you guys have the title. It was like no going on a missions trip. Oh my goodness! I don't know. I don't know. I don't see it. All right, but it is on their channel. It's really good. Just look up missions trip, I guess, and you'll find it. Oh, it's so long ago. All right, let's keep going. Oh, maybe it's a different
any
channel.
other thoughts on race?
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that we can only do so much, and we can
Randy.
all we can really do is listen and try to understand and do our best to support people in these things. Because again, we are very, very white.
Yeah.
So
allyship and
that's all we can really do, and it's tough because we really have no true sense of the scope of it and how it affects people's lives on a daily basis, and how it's still so present. And we talked a lot about the U.S. where it is a lot of race relations, especially between like white and black Americans, but we have it in Canada too.
Yeah.
I mean, huge problems. This also in the States, but a big problem with Indigenous communities in Canada, and just like the barbaric treatment that our government has been given to them since Confederation, since before then. Like the Royal Canadian Mounted Police were basically founded to, keep their thumb on them, and to corral them into their, way of doing. So
what's that thing? Is it called the Moonlight Stroll or Moonlight Walk or whatever? It's I believe in Regina.
Yeah.
Police were taking, if they'd arrest a First Nations person, instead of just bringing them and booking them, they would just drive them out in the winter to the middle of nowhere, no jacket, and just leave them there.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
To walk it off.
Yeah, fuck that.
And then so many people have just died from.
Of course they did.
Racist police. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So it's still very present today.
Yeah.
Everywhere, in different forms. So yeah. Don't delude yourself that it's not.
Nope. Keep finding and and we're gonna miss the mark.
And vote.
I'm sure we missed the mark on a few things here.
100% we did.
So
we're doing the best that we can with the information we have, and we're trying to be understanding. It doesn't always work out, but that's also why we're willing to listen. We're willing to hear opposing views and to change what we've said based on that. What comes towards us as well.
Yeah, exactly. And also, you guys think that my editing is getting better with making it look like me and Damien are in the same room? Like, it's crazy.
Whoa. I'm in Cuba right now.
It's nuts.
I had to flee the country.
Yeah, it's true.
The lighting is so convincing.
Who hasn't?
I wish.
Speaking of fleeing the country, should we thank our Patreons?
We should thank our patrons on Patreon.
Yeah, Patreon patrons.
Patreon patriots.
Oh my God! Wow! Thank you so much.
Mexico's.
Yeah.
Duet Ron on me.
Yeah.
Duet.
Do it, Ron on me.
Run a train.
Do
on
it
me.
with Ron. Do a train on me.
And then
Jenny's book, huh?
Jenny's
Okay,
book.
real quick.
Right.
And then we
Boom.
got.
Let's go. What's up, Steph?
Real quick. I just want to say something about voting. If voting wasn't important, these sons of bitches wouldn't be fighting so hard to stop us from doing it. If voting was off the table, if it didn't matter, they wouldn't be fighting to keep the people of Jackson, Mississippi, from voting. The capital of the state. They wouldn't be trying to turn Jackson, Mississippi into an all-white enclave of voters,
right?
So that the gerrymandered folks of Mississippi who send their white ass crackers into the state capitol don't have to look at black people. They wouldn't be fighting so goddamn hard to take the vote away from people if it weren't for the fact that they're scared of people.
Absolutely.
And do you know how fucking hard it was to get that vote? We fought. People my age.
Died, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
wait, I want to talk to you kids a little bit.
All right.
You know what? Some of us fought, some of us bled, some of us died to get the fucking vote all throughout the South. And now I'm having to watch it all disappear. And you know who you're blaming? People like me. Cut it out. Look at your own house. Clean it up. I'm sorry.
No, I understand. And it's crazy too that this is happening, and then people are buying into narratives that treat racism like a solved problem. When to me, it's such a regular occurrence that just like the trans community, we are constantly dealing with laws, right? This effort to not just have prejudice or bigotry, and there's all of that's happening. But on top of that, you have it becoming the fucking law of the land.
Well, the law of the land used to be segregation. The law of the land used to be a poll tax. The law of the land used to be literacy tests. The law of the land used to be a whole bunch of stuff that people had to struggle to get rid of.
Right.
The people that are making these laws, they didn't get there by accident. They didn't magically appear in state capitals as if sent from God himself. They were sent there by people who voted them in. And they got voted in large part because of measures to suppress the vote. That's very, very important. I mean, this is fundamental political science. You can't expect to just sit by and watch and expect things to change. They won't. It's getting to that point. And the people on the right clearly are not. When they march to Washington, D.C. And break into the nation's capital, smear shit all over the walls, and erect a gallows outside. Now, I'm not saying that that's particularly good tactics.
Right.
It was never anything that we engaged in.
Right.
Back in the day.
Right.
We did the marching, but we didn't do the busting in and throwing it with Confederate flags and throwing shit all over the walls. But God damn it, these people are serious.
And the other side's got to at least vote. You at least got to get off your ass and vote. They are not
playing. So you've got to at least, if you don't want to get in the streets and you don't want to march, you can get on the phone and do voter drives. You can do whatever you need to do. But this is serious stuff right now.
And Steph, I hate to put you on the spot.
Arguing on the internet ain't gonna solve it.
That's true as well. And I want to do more with this, so we don't have to get in all of it. But what is the ask right now? Because I brought this up the other day, where after George Floyd's murder, there was marching in the streets, and I did not do that because I was trying to finish my PhD and go about it another way. And certainly that wasn't the ask from me, right? My ask was more, hey, we really need to look at, economic justice and police policies and you know, this guy needs to be convicted of murder, some of those things. What's the ask right now for people who want to be trans allies? Because I said I think we're at a marching in the streets moment, and I just want to communicate publicly that I think that that's sincere, but I don't hear people asking for that. But I do think that's what time it is, right? Like we're at that point as far as I'm concerned.
It's time to, yes, visibility is important, but that's one, you know, the marches, the demonstrations, they're a tactic. Nonviolence is a tactic, but it's only one element. And we need better strategies, and the strategy has to be getting people to the polls and getting the people who currently have their hands on the levers of power to not have their hands there any longer, and to be aware of people who will apologize. Well, you can't call me racist. I'm not racist. I have one black friend. You can't call me a homophobe. I have, you know, my uncle's queer or something like this. No, you've got to look at what people are actually saying. When somebody says that they're under no obligation when they're just asking questions about, they're just, you know, throwing up that trial balloon about the Aryan race being superior to all the others on the planet. Oh, I'm just talking about it. If you're not saying you're talking about it so that you can throw it in the garbage with the friggin', you know,
with the stale bread,
then you're not sincere. What you're doing is you're pushing this nonsense out there, and you're giving people permission. And what we had is a political movement led by a guy who just didn't give a shit about anything other than himself, and he's still the most popular guy in the Republican Party.
Absolutely.
So we've got to stop these. They're using political means, and we've got to get better at that. So the ask is, find your candidates. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You don't like the fact that that old man Joe Biden, who happens to be only 2 years older than Donald Trump, is in the White House. I don't fucking care. If he's the only guy who can stop that asshole, you've got to put him back in office, or find somebody better that he can support, because he's got the political base. We can't be fighting each other tooth and nail, waiting for something to happen, or the ghost of Lenin to reappear and bring Bolshevik paradise to America. That's not happening.
I'm with Joy-Ann Reid, where I now think that whole party has to lose everywhere. I think even being the Republican candidate for dog catcher in the middle of nowhere should be an instant loss. Death sentence.
Yes. They have to lose, and they have to lose huge, or they'll never change.
And
that, whatever it takes to achieve that, that's what the ask is. And that's the ask from the trans community. That's the ask from communities of color. That's the ask from all of us who are at the tip of the spear. Stop pussyfooting around. These people are serious, and they're coming after you next. You know, and don't be saying, well, you know, wait till these people die off. We'll die off, and then you'll be left with you all. And don't think that, you know, Matt Walsh is 40. Tucker Carlson's, I don't know, what is he, 50 maybe?
Yeah.
You know, and you know, there are all sorts of fuckfaces who are young people who are huge influencers. You know, Andrew Tate. There's so many.
Yes, and there's a whole bunch of them with the crypto too.
Now.
Yes.
Those people will be with you until you are as old as I am, and they are just as fucking serious as the old
the old
redneck
money.
Klansmen. That they're just as old. They're gonna be just as serious when they're 70 as David Duke is.
And I think they might have much more economic power, both absolutely and in relative terms, with the way we're going.
Well, if you look at clout, I mean,
don't even get started on the social media clout.
How many subbies do you have?
Yeah, we're definitely getting crushed.
How many subbies does Matt Walsh have?
Yeah,
it's like, come on now.
Yeah.
Let's be serious.
Yeah,
You gotta stop the nonsense. You want to see the world improve, you've got to stop the nonsense and get serious about it.
Yeah. No, that's. I feel like that's got to be the floor. That's got to be the floor. We're gonna do more content, and we'll talk about the ceiling, because I think we need to do more than that. Appreciate you,
So
Steph.
I got a little hot there, and I but I don't apologize.
No,
I think it's really important to keep our eyes on the donut and not on the hole at this point in time, because we stand to lose the whole thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is another thing you always talk about, which is fighting for rights we already had, right? When
abortion,
we need to be fighting for an expansion of rights, and I it pains me that that's not even on the table right now.
Abortion, huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah, and I wanted to expand those. Right, like they weren't sufficient the way they were. Yeah.
I mean, the Baptists never used to give a fuck about abortion, but got turned into a political issue. I mean, it's and the other thing I wanted to throw in when it comes to the focus of on Christianity or blah blah blah. The reason it works is because the churches are centers of power. They were centers of power during the civil rights movement. On the other side, they are centers of power now. These large congregations that focus around an issue, they're centers of power now for the Christian right. That's more of what it's about.
Yeah.
Like, how do we get these people on our side? Say the politicians. Well, we pander to their stuff and we throw a few bones their way.
Yeah, that's what's hard, because we're relying, especially when it comes to government officials, on a pretty exclusive Christian majority to give us the reforms we need to create a more secular country, and that's a abysmal prospect, to say the least.
I don't think Donald Trump is a devout Christian. I do think all of the people that he appointed to the Supreme Court are very devout, right-wing Catholics for the most part. But that's where there's power in the church, and a master manipulator. Well, I wouldn't call Trump, he's a master baiter, but is a guy like him, an opportunist like him, will use that. Here's something I can use.
Right.
Here's a center of power I can tweak. So I don't know. I've taken up enough of your time.
No, you're good. You're good. Always good to go. Always glad to have you here. I appreciate it. Yeah, we'll keep going.
The Book of Ruth.
Right.
Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah, Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah. So they're all in there. All the justices.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
I thought, and then book 3, Return of the King.
Yeah. And then you got the Return of the Swing, which is
the sex swing that they bought.
Yeah.
But they kept it in the closet for a few years, and they're like, let's bring it back.
Yeah. I have the receipt. I know it was barely used.
I more meant bring it back out to try and use it again.
I thought you meant to the store, like a barely used sex swing.
It's like the world's shortest status story? Pair of baby shoes never worn. Or for sale, baby shoes never worn. That's what it is.
That's sad.
But back to the Bible study.
But let's lift up some people in prayer.
Let's lift them, praise them, and raise them.
Praise them and raise them, y'all.
Good friends. Ruth.
Would like to pray for
Aiden,
Sister Susan.
Forget.
Who's going through the messiest of divorces. That's real. I'm really sorry that your husband's been cheating on you with the secretary. I'd like to lift Sister Carrie Ann up, who's just went bankrupt after a bad business investment. And Lord, we just lift up pragmatic Crystal to you, who suffers from intense halitosis, which makes it unbearable. Sorry, we're just making fun of Christians. Oh man,
it was like a mild JoJo reference. Not a very good one. But.
No. Oh yeah, we were gonna try to put those.
Prayer's
in more
the best way to embarrass people in public.
I thought I'd slip one in. And I wore my Junji Ito shirt today too, so there we go. So I'm trying.
And I'm doing for my favorite show from Doctor Who, where the Doctor is.
But we still have some very special thank yous for our Bible study.
I want to give a huge prayer.
We need the spirit of Hoover to move in this place.
DPEJ, which is a beautiful name. I think your parents chose wisely when naming you. And but I just want to lift you up.
Mm-hmm.
I want to lift up DPEJ, and I just want to say that they've been trying to be very holy. They've been reading about holiness, and they're like, I want to be more holy. But they're a little confused on what that means, so they bought a hole punch.
Oh, that sucks.
That didn't work, and then they tried to drill, but it hurt. And they're like, I don't think it should hurt that much to be holy.
Yeah.
So it's been a journey to holiness. So I pray. I should talk to them and just say, hey, that's not how you do it. But instead, I'm going to pray for them. Yeah.
Right. Pray. And I have one for our friend Annalie. Annalie, we were at the church. We were drinking some lemonade. It was a great day.
Yeah.
And I'd cut myself a little bit, and I had a Band-Aid on. And we were just talking, and I was saying, I got to get rid of this. And Annalie told me, it's like, you just got to rip the Band-Aid off. You just got to rip it off. You know?
Yeah.
You just got to rip it off. And usually I do it very slowly because I'm a big baby, and that's what I did. But I ripped it off, and it wasn't quite healed enough, and I kept nicking it all day, and I got lemonade juice in my cut. So I just want to say, Annalie, can you please just before you suggest ripping the Band-Aid off, make sure that the wound underneath is healed.
How do you do that?
And I think Annalie was referring to
you got to give it some air.
Job.
Got to give it some air.
That's true. That is what they were talking about.
I was deflecting. Fucking metaphors.
And I made it about the literal Band-Aid that I had on.
And that makes sense.
So Annalie, thank you for your support, but not thank you for confusing me. Amen.
And should we do a Christian rock lyric?
I want to hear it.
Can't you see you're not making Christianity better? You're just making rock and roll worse.
I Googled on the internet of songs about Christian rock songs about racism.
Oh, no. Oh,
I read the lyrics and I was like, this isn't really about racism. And then I realized that it's because the music video, there's a lot of protest stuff going on in the background. Okay. And it reminded me of that Pepsi commercial with Caitlyn Jenner.
Is that who it was? Kylie Jenner.
Yeah.
Where she solved racism with Pepsi.
Yeah. Which reminded me.
I kind of want a Pepsi now.
When I was working at the restaurant and someone was like, is the Black Lives Matter protest still this Saturday? Like, it was a coworker, not a customer.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, they solved it.
Because of the Pepsi commercial?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, Kylie Jenner did the thing, and then now it's fine. And yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But this song is called It's Not But God.
It's not But God?
It's But God.
Are you sure it's not But God? Who is this by, like Nicki Minaj or something?
Yeah, I'd be more interested in But God. Like an actual God of asses.
No, it's by a guy named John Waller. But God. That would
make a lot more sense.
I don't want go to church.
I don't want to be a butt god.
If fat booties are evidence of God, I'd be
the
like,
song goes,
okay,
I
God's
see
definitely
darkness.
real.
They're getting darker.
God is
All hell
definitely
is breaking
real.
loose. I see chaos all
Instead,
around
somebody's
us.
like,
So Lord,
big
I cling
booties are
to you.
evidence of sexual
No
selection
matter
in
if I'm
humans, and I'm
surrounded
like,
by the devil
fucking
and
Darwin.
1,000 men in the middle of the darkest hour, when I stand no chance. But God is my fortress, I will not be shaken. Though I am surrounded, I will not be forsaken. God is my shield, and praise is my weapon. In the face of impossible odds, I will say, but God. I won't let my heart be troubled, because I know we'll overcome, because he told us in this world,
there are battles.
There are battles and trials.
Trials.
Twerking like you work it.
And then it goes on like that. And it makes
But
me
God.
wonder, is but God, when he uses the imagery of the
All right,
protest.
why are we letting them be silly? All right, gang, let's wrap this thing on up. So look, I want to throw in a couple of points that they didn't touch on that I consider kind of to be the basics of Christianity and racism 101, although I think they did a fantastic job. Okay, let's just cover a couple of things in no particular order. First thing we're going to throw out there is taking a religion based on a guy who's clearly from the Middle East and making him white is racist as fuck. And think about how different life in a racist-ass place like America would be if God was constantly depicted as a dark-skinned individual. Like white Jesus is the thing that is like, it's like the elephant in the room. Like it's not even worth talking about because it's kind of so obvious. But it is worth mentioning that white Jesus is pretty fucking racist, considering where Jesus would be from, and also it makes it feel like having dark skin is too icky for God, right? Another thing that I don't think people genuinely think about is what I consider to be inherently racist dynamics on both sides. So, in one sense, Christianity is racist because it plays around with the idea of slavery. I call it like recreational slavery. And people who have experienced slavery or have slavery in their history or ancestry should not engage in recreational slavery. And I mean that like seriously. Like this desire to call somebody Lord, to have a master that rules over you, it just feels inherently insensitive to the racial history of slavery in this country. Like, oh, let me tell you about this great idea I have. You should subject yourself to our Lord and Savior and worship him. Like it's just like, are y'all serious? And I know that that's like a aspect of it. You're not really supposed to talk about that because I don't know, nobody does. But I find it inherently problematic. And just like on the flip side, this idea to be a chosen people, I think, is also inherently problematic. This idea that, first off, it literally like creates an ethnicity. Like you should be set apart by your customs and, do's the do's and don'ts. And it in a sense, the faith has mechanisms in it for manufacturing an ethnic identity, and then literally insistence on a supernatural sort of narrative where these people are the elites and the only people deserving of life in the end and all this type of shit. And it's kind of laughable in a sense, but it's very sinister. And I think if you listen to most Christian ministers and messages, keeping that sort of chosen people thing front and center of your awareness, Christianity to me just takes on, it goes dark pretty quickly. Because then even the sweet, innocent mothers and grandmothers who, you know, just love to have them some sweet, sweet Jesus in their heart, you realize they need that sweet, sweet Jesus in their heart because they've bought into the idea that makes them part of the chosen master race. And then on top of that, just as it feels problematic to me that people are willing to go to war to maintain their right to own slaves, it's problematic to me that people make themselves so emotionally vulnerable and dependent upon their emotional support ideology that you can't tell them they're wrong about their faith, essentially, because they literally, their identity will disintegrate in the face of not being part of the chosen master race. And I'm like, yeah, this is problematic, right? So to me, those are some of the things that are wrapped into the package of ideas that are definitely really problematic. All right, gang, look, we're gonna get up out of here. I'm gonna get myself some dinner, which I'm actually feeling breakfast for dinner, so I'm thinking I'm gonna do grits and sausage and keep it southern and tasty. And then I want to race, so we'll probably head to the casino. I'll grab myself some breakfast, a little diner service, and yeah, we'll get racing here. And yeah, thanks, gang. I appreciate everybody so much for tuning in. It's been kind of a long stream, but I wanted to get into all this, so everything came together, got it done. Appreciate you. Come link up with the gang and gather. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and subscribe to Hunter Biden's Laptops in the Casino down below for more content. See you next time, gang. Said I'm gone.
Why she wanna leave me alone? Saying all I do is wrong. No rights, only been left turns. Playing that she gotta let it burn. Saying that the house not a home. Sunshine cause she heard it all before. Sometimes she don't wanna be alone. Most times she don't want me gone. She don't know I try my all. She don't know I sprung in the sun, but I'm going in the winter, so we good to the fall. Remember how I told you I get it and I win. Now I'm got it, you ain't answer my call. Wonder if I've been moving too strong. Maybe I just been moving too balls. Really hate when the feeling get lost. Nowadays she just dodge my calls. In the game throwing lows like Paul. Young legend Miss John like Wall. And I wish you never met like Carl. Thick game lay it down like law. Made plans but you canceled them all. I was just trying to splurge in the mall. Now I'm home stacking bread till you call. It's time to roll. She tryna slide. We smoking Zah. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl. It's time to roll. She tryna ride. We smoking. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl.
Be smoking that side. I'm trying to get high. She said that she not ready for lust. I waste my time. I got demons in my closet. I can't hide. I did all my exes wrong. They wish wish I died. Damn, I tried. They won't believe me when I say this. Oh my God, what a blessing. Hello, Phoenix, that's my twin. I told these hoes they won't get my heart again. Not